Have you ever pondered a decision, confident in your judgment, only to find yourself regretting it down the line? At 82, I made a move into a nursing home, genuinely believing it would envelop me in comfort and security. My family, with the best intentions, encouraged it, assuring me of excellent care. But the reality that unfolded was far from the picture they painted. The stark loss of independence, the pervasive loneliness, and the unexpected decline in my health were blows I never saw coming. If you're contemplating a nursing home, either for yourself or a beloved family member, you absolutely need to hear this. I'm going to share 6 difficult lessons I wish I had been aware of before making such a monumental decision. Stick with me until the end. What I, yours truly, am about to reveal might just give you pause before taking that step. Regret number 1, the erosion of independence. The most jarring shock wasn't the compact size of my room, the unyielding meal schedules, or even the sea of unfamiliar faces. It was a creeping, profound realization that I had surrendered control over my very own life. Before, I had my routines, my little rituals that gave each day its own distinct flavor. I woke up naturally, savored brewing my morning coffee, and decided how to spend my day without needing to seek permission. If I felt like a walk, I'd lace up my shoes and go. If I wanted to lose myself in a book late into the night, I would. If a specific craving struck, I'd whip it up myself. Every choice, no matter how trivial, was mine to make. But all of that vanished the moment I crossed the threshold of the nursing home. I quickly learned that my time was no longer my own. Everything operated on a schedule dictated by others. Breakfast was served at a precise hour, regardless of whether I was hungry. Sleeping in was out of the question, unless I was prepared to miss a meal. Lights went out at a prescribed time, even if I was wide awake. Even a simple walk required permission, and more often than not a wait for an available staff member to assist me. Basic decisions, things I had never given a second thought to before, became privileges rather than inherent rights. Think of Amelia Earhart, a woman who defied convention and charted her own course. Imagine her being told when she could fly, what route to take, and when to land. That's the feeling a circumflex years of spirit used to freedom suddenly confined. I recall during my first week waking up in a bed that felt alien. The mattress was stiff, the sheets unfamiliar. I sat up, stretched, and instinctively reached for the book I had been engrossed in at home. But as my eyes adjusted to the room, a wave of emptiness washed over me. This wasn't my home. My bookshelves, my favorite chair nestled by the window, the small treasures I had accumulated over the years as circumflexures all gone. In their place were sterile white walls, a bed I hadn't chosen, a dresser that wasn't mine, and a pervasive sense of displacement. Initially, I tried to cling to the feeling of autonomy. I asked if I could eat later, when I felt hungry. The answer was no. I wanted to take a short walk alone, just to feel the fresh air on my skin. I was told to wait. I asked if I could rearrange my room to make it feel more like home. There were rules. Slowly, I began to adapt, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The alternative was constant frustration. You cease questioning the rules, you stop resisting, you learn to accept what is given and relinquish the desire to decide for yourself. And that, perhaps, is the most difficult part. Because once you surrender your independence, reclaiming it becomes almost impossible. The little freedoms that once felt so insignificant, a circumflexures choosing what to eat, when to sleep, where to go, a circumflexures suddenly become the things you miss most. You don't realize how much they define you until they're gone. And when they are, a part of you goes with them. So, if you're contemplating a nursing home, ask yourself this: are you truly ready to surrender the small freedoms that make life feel like yours? Because once they slip away, you'll miss them more than you ever thought possible. If you're appreciating these insights, consider exploring more perspectives like these as circumflexures. You might find them incredibly useful in making informed decisions. Regret number 2, the feeling of being forgotten. One of the most painful realities of moving into a nursing home is the realization that life outside continues without you. The world doesn't pause, even though yours feels like it has. When I first arrived, my family reassured me that I wouldn't be alone, that they would visit often, that nothing would change except my address. I clung to their promises, and for a while, they kept them. My daughter visited every week, bringing stories about work and the neighborhood. My grandchildren would stop by on weekends, filling the room with laughter and the latest news from their schools. For those first few months, I almost convinced myself that I was still a part of their lives, that I still belonged. But as time passed, the visits became fewer and farther between. My daughter started calling instead of coming, her voice filled with apologies about being too busy. My grandchildren got caught up in their studies, their friendships, their growing responsibilities. Holidays, once a time of togetherness, became the most difficult days of all. Plans were made, then quietly changed. Invitations were promised, then forgotten. Each year, the festive season reminded me of how much had slipped away. Imagine a lighthouse keeper, once vital to guiding ships safely to shore, gradually seeing fewer and fewer vessels relying on their light as technology advances. Their purpose remains, but the world has moved on, leaving them feeling isolated. I would sit in the common room and watch other residents do the same, staring at the door, eyes lighting up whenever someone entered, only to fade with disappointment when the visitor wasn't for them. I knew they were feeling the same thing I was. They circumflex years, that slow, sinking sensation of becoming invisible. It's not that our families stop loving us. Love doesn't just disappear. But life moves forward, and when you're not a part of the daily routine, it's easy for people to assume you're fine, that you've adjusted, that you don't need them as much anymore. I remember one evening sitting alone in my room, my phone in my hand. I wanted to call my son to hear his voice, to remind him that I was still here. But I hesitated. I didn't want to be a burden, didn't want him to feel guilty for not visiting. So, I placed the phone down and stared out the window instead. That was the moment it hit me. This was my life now, watching the days pass, hoping someone would remember me, waiting for a knock on the door that might never come. Regret number 3, the loss of purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I thought I was just changing my address. I believed that life would continue as usual, just in a different setting. What I didn't realize was that I was also leaving behind something far more important, my sense of purpose. At home, I had responsibilities, routines, and a feeling of control over my daily life. There was comfort in the little things, brewing my morning coffee just the way I liked it, taking care of my houseplants, tidying up my space, deciding what to cook for dinner. These weren't just chores, they were rituals that gave my days meaning. Each small task was a reminder that I was still capable, still contributing to the life I had built for myself. But in the nursing home, those rituals vanished. Meals were prepared and served to me on a schedule that wasn't mine. The cleaning was done by staff, leaving me with nothing to straighten or arrange. Plants I had nurtured for years were left behind, now someone else's responsibility. Think of a seasoned musician, accustomed to composing and performing, suddenly finding themselves without an instrument or an audience. The passion remains, but the outlet is gone, leaving a void. At first, I told myself this was a well-earned break. No more cooking, no more sweeping, no more worries about daily upkeep. I thought I would enjoy the freedom from those responsibilities. But what I didn't anticipate was the emptiness that followed. The day stretched out before me, long and uneventful. There was nowhere to be, nothing to prepare for, no reason to get up early or stay up late. Conversations with other residents often revolved around the past, because for many of us, the prison felt like a waiting room for whatever came next. I started noticing the same pattern in others. One man, George, had been a carpenter his entire life. He had spent decades crafting, fixing, and building, his hands always busy with a project. But here, there were no tools, no pieces of wood to shape into something useful. I watched him slowly withdraw, his once calloused hands, strong and skilled from years of labor, now rested idly in his lap. One day, he confided in me, I feel useless. And in that moment, I knew exactly what he meant. It's a slow unraveling, this loss of purpose. When you no longer have something to care for, something to work toward, life begins to lose its sharpness. The mind slows, the body follows, and soon you feel like just another person in a place where time moves but nothing changes. I had underestimated how much I needed to feel needed, how much purpose was woven into the fabric of my everyday life. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself what truly gives your life meaning. Because finding purpose isn't just about staying busy, it's about holding onto the things that make you feel alive. And once you let those go, getting them back isn't so easy. Regret number 4, declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into a nursing home, I felt like I was doing fairly well for my age. I wasn't running marathons or lifting weights, but I was independent. I could take care of myself, handle my daily routine, and stay active in my way. I had small habits that kept me moving, stretching in the mornings, walking to the grocery store instead of driving, cooking my meals, and even just pacing around the house when I was thinking. These little things kept my body engaged, my muscles strong, and my energy levels up. I never thought of myself as someone who would decline quickly. I assumed that as long as I kept doing what I could, I'd maintain my strength for years to come. But then I moved into the nursing home, and everything changed. Slowly at first, and then all at once. In the beginning, it felt like a relief. Meals were prepared and brought to me, so I no longer had to stand in the kitchen. If I needed anything, a Circumflex Euros a drink, an extra blanket, assistance with something small as Circumflex Euros, I only had to press a button and help would arrive. At first, I told myself I would still stay active. I would still go for walks, still do my stretches, still keep myself moving. But little by little, I started doing less. It wasn't intentional, it just became so easy to sit back and let things happen around me instead of making the effort myself. I didn't notice the change right away, but after a while, I realized I wasn't moving as much as I used to. My legs, once strong from all the walking, started to feel weaker. I sat for longer periods without even thinking about it. At first, I just felt a little stiff when I got up, but then stiffness turned into difficulty. Getting out of a chair became a struggle. Climbing a few steps felt exhausting. The muscles I had worked so hard to maintain were disappearing before my eyes, and I couldn't seem to stop it. Consider a once vibrant garden, left unattended. The weeds creep in, the flowers wither, and the pathways become overgrown, slowly obscuring the beauty that once thrived. And I wasn't the only one. I saw it happen all around me. When some of us first arrived, we were walking in on our own 2 feet, moving with ease, still full of energy. But over time, many of us became dependent on walkers, and then, before we knew it, on wheelchairs. The irony was painful. By making life easier, the nursing home had also made it harder in the long run. The more help we received, the more help we needed. It was a slow process, almost invisible at first, but one day you wake up and realize that the person who walked in on their own now struggles to stand. I remember my neighbour Alice, an 81-year-old woman who was so full of life when she first arrived. She had always been determined to stay active, taking daily walks around the facility, proudly declaring that she wouldn't let age slow her down. "I move because I can," she'd say. But then, gradually, she started walking a little less. At first, it was just skipping a walk here and there, nothing too noticeable. Then she started using a walker, just for support, she claimed. And then one day, I saw her in a wheelchair. She looked at me with tired eyes and said, "I don't know what happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in just a few months." That moment stuck with me because it was exactly how I felt. The loss of strength sneaks up on you when you stop using your body. And in a place designed to make things effortless, it becomes dangerously easy to let your body fade away. The reality is that movement isn't just about convenience, it's about survival. Muscles that aren't used deteriorate, joints that aren't stretched stiffen, independence that isn't exercised disappears. Looking back, if I had known how quickly I would lose my physical strength, I would have fought harder to keep it. I would have kept walking, kept stretching, kept finding reasons to move, even when it felt unnecessary. I would have pushed through the temptation to take it easy, because once you slowed down, getting back up isn't as simple as you think. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself this: will you still have the motivation to keep your body strong when everything is set up to make life effortless? Because once you lose that strength, you may never get it back. Regret number 5, the loss of privacy and dignity. Before moving into a nursing home, I thought I had considered all the major changes I would face: the smaller living space, the structured schedule, and the presence of medical staff. But one thing I didn't fully anticipate was just how much privacy I would lose, and how deeply that loss would affect me. At home, I had my sanctuary. My bedroom was my retreat, a place where I could close the door and be alone with my thoughts whenever I wanted. If I needed quiet, I could simply turn off my phone, shut the curtains, and enjoy the solitude. I could wake up when I pleased, eat what I wanted, and follow my routine without having to consult anyone. That freedom, the ability to live on my terms, was something I had always taken for granted. But in a nursing home, privacy becomes a rare commodity, something you can't always count on. From the moment I arrived, I felt a shift, like I had entered a space where my autonomy no longer belonged to me. Staff members came in and out of my room at all hours, checking vitals, braining medications, tidying up, even when I didn't ask them to. Scheduled room inspections meant that my personal space was never truly just mine. Think of a renowned artist, accustomed to creating in their own private studio, suddenly forced to work in a crowded, public space, their every move observed and scrutinized. Even the most basic aspects of daily life, things I had always done in private, were now moments of shared interaction. Getting dressed, for example, used to be a simple, personal act. Now, I often needed help with buttons, shoes, or even standing up long enough to pull on a sweater. I know the caregivers were just doing their jobs, and I appreciated their kindness, but there's something humbling, almost humiliating, about needing assistance for things you once did without second thought. Using the bathroom became another challenge. There were times I had to press the cold button and wait longer than I was comfortable with before someone could help me. Showers weren't something I could just take when I felt like it. They were scheduled, and I had to wait until a caregiver was available. I felt like my most personal moments were no longer my own, and that was difficult to accept. Even meal times brought unexpected limitations. If I didn't like what was on the menu that day, there wasn't much I could do about it. At home, I could go to the kitchen and make myself something different, but here, my choices were dictated by what was available. It was a small thing, but it reinforced the growing realization that my independence had been taken from me in ways I hadn't imagined. And then there was the matter of shared living space. Not everyone gets a private room, and I was one of many who had to adjust to having a roommate circumflex yours, someone I didn't choose, someone who was suddenly a part of my daily life, whether I liked it or not. I was fortunate. My roommate was kind and easy to get along with. But I heard plenty of stories from others who weren't so lucky. Some had roommates who snored loudly, had difficult personalities, or suffered from cognitive decline that made nighttime rest nearly impossible. There's something unsettling about sharing your personal space with a stranger, knowing that no matter how well you decorate or arrange your things, the room will never truly be yours. But the hardest part wasn't just the lack of privacy, it was the slow erosion of my dignity. When people knock on your door but don't always wait for permission to enter, when you're spoken to in a tone that makes you feel like a patient instead of an adult, when your daily routine is structured around someone else's schedule instead of your own, it does something to your sense of self. It's not just about losing control over where you live, it's about feeling like you've lost control over who you are. I never expected to feel this way, but now that I do, I realize how important it is to think carefully before making this transition. If you're considering moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, are you truly prepared to surrender the privacy and independence you've known your entire life? Because once they're gone, you may find yourself longing for something that can never quite be replaced. Regret number 6, realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first decided to move into a nursing home, I convinced myself it was just a temporary arrangement. I told myself I would give it a trial run, see how things went, adjust to the new environment, and if it didn't suit me, I could always go back home. It seemed simple. After all, it was just a change of scenery, not a permanent decision. Or so I thought. At first, I felt a sense of relief. There was no longer the burden of home maintenance, no more worries about cooking meals, cleaning, or managing daily tasks alone. Everything was taken care of, and I could just focus on resting and socializing. But as time passed, I started to feel something unexpected, a creeping sense of unease. The thought of returning home, which once seemed so straightforward, now felt almost impossible. The first challenge was the house itself. While I had been settling into my new routine, my home had been sitting empty, without anyone actively maintaining it. Small issues became bigger ones. Dusk gathered, appliances sat unused, and the warmth that made it feel like home started to fade. My children, well-meaning as they were, had already started making decisions without me. They sold things they assumed I wouldn't need any more A-circumflex euros furniture, clothes, sentimental items that held decades of memories. They even started discussing the idea of renting out the house, believing it would be practical since I wasn't using it. When I finally brought up the idea of moving back, I was met with hesitation. Are you sure you can manage everything on your own? Wouldn't it be safer to stay where you are? We just want what's best for you. Their words, though spoken with love, planted a seed of doubt. Could I go back? Did I have the strength to pick up where I left off? Think of a seasoned sailor, accustomed to navigating the open seas, becoming accustomed to the calm waters of a harbour. The vast ocean still beckons, but the comfort and ease of the harbour make it harder to set sail once more. That was when I noticed the second problem, me. Living in a place where I no longer had to lift a finger changed me in ways I didn't anticipate. I wasn't walking as much as I used to. My hands, once so used to cooking and cleaning, had become unfamiliar with the effort. The independence I had prided myself on had started slipping away, quietly and gradually, without me even realizing it. The confidence I once had, the certainty that I could take care of myself, wasn't there anymore. And that fear, more than anything else, kept me from making the move back home. I wasn't alone in this realization. I met many others who shared the same story. They too had moved in with the mindset that it was just an experiment, that they could always change their minds later. But as months turned into years, the idea of leaving became harder and harder. Some had lost their homes entirely, their families had sold them, or the financial cost of long-term care had drained their savings, leaving them without a real choice. Others found that even if they still technically could go back, they no longer felt capable of living independently. That's the part no one tells you. You think you're making a decision that can be reversed, but for most people, it isn't. The nursing home slowly becomes your whole world, and before you know it, the life you once knew outside those walls starts feeling like a distant memory. The thought of returning home becomes more of a dream than an actual possibility. So, if you're considering moving into a nursing home, even temporarily, ask yourself, are you truly prepared for the reality that leaving might not be as simple as you think? Because once you settle in, the barriers, whether financial, physical, or emotional, can be much harder to overcome than you've ever imagined.